My name is Shayna Stahl. I am actually in Charlotte, North Carolina now. I work at UNC Charlotte, where I am the Associate Director of Bands and Director of Athletic Bands here. How in depth do you want me to go, Jack?
Take 60 seconds worth.
Okay, so just a little bit about my career path, I guess you could say. I'm actually from Long Island originally. I taught there in public schools for about 8 years while teaching part-time at Stony Brook University as the assistant director there for the marching band. I became the director there for 3 years and then decided to go back for my doctorate. Which is where I went to University of Washington, did my doctorate 3 years there, and then here I am in Charlotte now. So it's just a short tidbit about myself.
All right, Rodney, give me next.
Oh, good. I'm Rodney Dorsey, currently at Indiana University, director of bands. I grew up in Gainesville, Florida. Went to Florida State University, did music ed, 5-year plan. Yep, scalp 'em, Seminoles. I was a high school band director for 8 years, and the sequence goes, I taught at Rickards High School, so if anybody went to FAMU, they know Rickards, or you're from Tallahassee, so I taught there for 3 years. Went to Northwestern to do my master's, studied with John Painter, was a 1-year program. Then taught in Georgia, and that's where I got to know Vince Rossi and all the Georgia people. And taught at Forest Park High School for a year. And after I left Forest Park, I went back to Florida, opened a new high school in Lakeland, taught there for 4 years, and then started the whole college teaching thing, Northwestern, director of athletic bands, and started my doctorate at the same time, which I don't suggest you do. Just go to school or work. Don't try to do both. Left Northwestern, went to DePaul, was the associate director of bands there. Left DePaul, went to Michigan, was there for 7 years. Michigan to Oregon, 5 years, and now I'm at Indiana, and I don't want to move again. So that's pretty much my story, and I'm sticking to it.
All right, Shelby. You muted, Shelby.
That would be helpful if I unmute myself. I'm talking to myself. But good evening, everyone. Currently director of bands at Florida A&M University here in Tallahassee. And of course, born and raised in the greatest city in the world, Miami, Florida, back in the day. And graduated from Miami Northwestern High School, and eventually went on to Florida A&M University, where I received a Bachelor of Science degree in Computer Science and Music Education, and had a chance to work with Dr. William P. Foster and Julian White and other staff members. And subsequently, I went back to Miami and taught high school band at Miami American High School for 1 year as an assistant, and then 9 years as a director at Miami Central High School. During the summers program, I attended the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana and worked with Professor Jim Keene and Gary Smith. And then, of course, finished up there and went back to Miami Central, where later on Dr. Foster and White asked me to come back and join the staff. And I've been here now for 22 years. This will be my 22nd year at FAMU. And of course, I received my doctorate degree from Florida State University, working with a host of individuals in that music ed faculty. And now I'm, of course, in my 4th year as director of bands here. And I also served, completing my 1st year as president-elect of FMEA.
All right, Nick.
Thanks, Jack. Sorry about that. My name is Nick Williams, for those of you that I haven't met yet. I guess I'll go in reverse chronological order. So I'm from Dallas, Texas, went to Skyline High School back in the 20th century. Then I went to North Texas to do my undergrad as a trumpet player, music ed student. Finished that, I did the typical 5-year music ed plan. And then I taught high school for 5 years in Plano, Texas. And Plano is a northeastern suburb of the city of Dallas. Did that for a few years teaching high school. Then I went back to North Texas to start my master's degree. About halfway through that degree, I started the job that I did at North Texas for 16 years. I was on faculty there as the assistant director, did marching band and all the athletic band stuff, taught conducting, conducted the concert band, the wind ensemble, which is did a whole bunch of stuff. And then I got the itch to look at some different things. And as of July of last year, I'm now at the University of Melbourne in Victoria, Australia, where I'm the conductor of wind ensembles, director of bands. So a very interesting pathway to get to Australia. So that's me, and I'm happy to be here with everybody.
And then Tanya.
Hi, everybody. It's nice to be here with you tonight. I'm Tanya. I grew up in Lawrenceville, Georgia, which is 20 minutes north of Atlanta. And then I left and I went to Indiana University, where Dr. Dorsey is now. And I finished up my degree in Arizona on the Navajo reservation. I had like an unconventional end to my undergraduate. And then I moved back to Georgia and I taught high school at Chamblee Charter High School in DeKalb County for 4 years, which is where I know a lot of my Georgia people on the call today. And then while I was at Chamblee, I worked on my master's degree in music education from the University of Georgia. So it was a lot of summer work and a lot of driving back and forth. And then I went to Kansas, and kind of a far departure. I went to the University of Kansas to work on my doctorate in wind conducting, and I was halfway through that when I left to go to Valdosta, Georgia. So it's like up and down. And I took a job as interim director of athletic bands, associate director of bands at Valdosta. And after that 1 year, went to the University of South Carolina, and I've been here for 3 years. I've worked with all the athletic bands, conducting all the ensembles, music ed classes as well. And we're actually about to move this Saturday to State College, Pennsylvania, and in the fall, I'll start a new position as Director of Wind Studies at Penn State.
And last but not least, Kelvin.
Oh man, I feel so weird coming after greatness like that. I'm Kelvin, everyone. Currently at LSU. My little trajectory, I was born in the big city of Greenville, Mississippi, which is the super small city, I should say. But from there, my mother is an educator. My dad was in the military. So I did the whole military circuit, lived in California, Japan, North Carolina, Texas, Louisiana for the longest. Graduated high school in Hawaii. Did my undergraduate work at Jackson State University in Jackson, Mississippi. And then from there, my final couple years there, I was assistant director at a school in Hollandale, Mississippi, another big city in Mississippi, which is very small. But from there, got to LSU, did my master's there, had my own program in Louisiana after I finished my master's at LSU. Had some success there, then came back to LSU for my doctorate. Then was just fortunate and got hired on once I finished my degree, and been there since, currently serving as the director of the Golden Band from Tigerland and the current national champions, just throwing that little plug out there. So, but otherwise, I'm super happy to be here and looking forward to learning from a lot of the great panelists we have here as well.
Is that national champion in golf?
A couple of them, we don't want to brag, we're kind of
golf. What
US
sport is
Open
that?
champ, David Tom.
So, as everyone see, we have a wide range of panelists with through diverse backgrounds, and so we're just going to use this to be a conversation and to find out more about their lives and what they think about in this band vein. Some of the questions are going to be serious, and some are going to be funny. We're just just here just to have a conversation. So some questions will be for everyone. Some questions will be specifically for the panelists, or individually for the panelists. If you yourself have questions, you can just put it in the chat, and we'll try to get through your questions. I have a whole list of questions, but I don't want to be the only one to ask the question. So my first question is going to be, finish this statement. I want to be a band director whose band students say blank. And we'll start with Rodney.
I want to be a band director whose band students think and know that I care about them as individuals.
Shayna.
Gosh, he stole mine. Let's think. Aside from saying that I care, someone that they'll say that I go above and beyond for them.
We'll do Kelvin, Shelby, Nick. I think that's who am I missing, and Tanya. We'll do it in that order.
Cool. I would say mine. Students who feel that I'm a passionate person. That I guess is kind of segueing what Rodney and Shayna said. Passionate person who really cares about the students and will go above and beyond for their benefit, even if it's to the detriment of myself. We're all about trying to get it right versus trying to be right. I know it's very run-on sentence.
Yeah, I would say I would like my students to understand that I'm a band director that's going to encourage them to always understand you have to work through adversity. And we know all the challenges that life invokes with all of us on the home front as well as on the school grounds. And so working through adversity, so that'll make them stronger as they move forward.
Well, I feel for Tanya having to go last because all the great answers are being taken so far. So good luck, girl. I think in addition to all the great answers that have been said, I feel that hard work is something that we all have to continue to work on. So, I want my students to know that I care about them and their progress through not only their time in school and their career and their life, but in addition to that, yeah, it's about hard work, and like Shelby said, getting through that adversity, you gotta work hard to do that. So that's what I think. Doctor, go ahead.
I'm going to say similar things to everybody else because that's the right answer. I want to be the kind of band director whose students say, she cared to get to know each and every single one of us so that we all had a unique and meaningful experience, or in the kind of director who's willing to grow alongside the students so that we're constantly learning new things about ourselves, the kind that like that shift of words from the kind that teaches people to enact a musical vision, not the kind that teaches music to people. If I can make that, it's like a slight change of words that I think makes a big difference in being student-centered.
Still there. All right. So that's really, really great. So Tanya, continuing with you, what's one thing you're excited about, you're most excited about going to Penn State?
Getting to know the students and the colleagues as people. You travel and you get lucky enough to get to share something with different people at different schools. And a lot of that's similar, but what really makes something different is the people that you interact with, the students and their personality and what they share and that kind of give and take that you get to develop in the classroom. And so I'm really excited about forming that relationship, probably digitally in the fall, whatever capacity we are in back in school, and then that relationship with students and then also with my colleagues.
This next question to be for our seasoned people in the group. They're not old quite yet, but they're super seasoned. So Nick, Rodney, and Shelby, what is one thing you wish you could say to your 25-year-old self right now?
First of all, I don't know that I would be in the super seasoned category, so we'll talk about that after this is over. I don't know, the 25-year-old self, I was 25 in my third or fourth year of teaching. And I guess I would tell that person that he needs to be more patient with the process. I was so excited to get out of school to become a teacher and to motivate and inspire. I just remember we couldn't get to all the things I wanted to fast enough. Like we didn't play well enough fast enough. We couldn't, all the things. I just couldn't get there, and that created a lot of frustration for me. Just because I would look at my mentors and I'm like, this person has done this already, and they've gone to this thing, and they're on this committee, and they're on the board of blah blah blah. And I want to be able to have a meaningful impact on people like that, But I was also looking at my mentors who were, as you would say, Jack, the super seasoned professionals, and it was just, it took a while for me to realize that I've got to just be patient, and put my head down, work on what I need to work on, and if I do the right things and surround myself with people that are willing to help, hopefully I'll get there. So yeah, short answer, be more patient.
Yeah, I'll say be careful and wise, and I think we've all been there at some point in time, that we don't conduct or rehearse that recording that we performed in college, because we have to always, make sure that we're mindful of the students that are under our care. And sometimes when we finish college, initially we're so used to having opportunities to rehearse that undergraduate ensemble, that graduate ensemble, and we go and get schools such as middle schools and high schools where we want to initially play some of that same literature. And we just have to be mindful to make sure that the music is centered around the students and their not only their age level, but also what's appropriate in terms of where they are fundamentally with the music. And selecting music is just so critical, whether it's that comprehensive program that you're starting at the beginning of the year, and how you go about selecting those rhythmic studies and technique books to the actual music that you select. So I would say just be cautious of how you go about selecting your music. I can think back to graduating from FAMU years ago, and I was an assistant for 1 year, but when I went up to Miami Central, there was a strong tradition there over time that changed over years. And I remember Kenneth Talbot, who used to be in that position. Some of you may not know him, and some of you may know that name. He's gone on now and passed on, but he once told me, and I'll never forget it, he says, "Chipman, you have to build down before you can build up." And that just resonated with me for my entire career, meaning that on all levels, whether it's dealing with administration, dealing with the parents, dealing with the students themselves, and all the other particulars, you have to start somewhere before you can reach that peak that you feel that you may be at that early time in your career. And selecting music is so important, and that's where those people that are around you that you put in your circles are so valuable to help and assist you early on as a young director.
And before Rodney answers, I want everyone to give Shelby just a shout out clap for his group being invited to perform at the College Band Directors National Association Conference in the spring, which is a huge deal.
Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, so since I think I have the most gray hair of the three people who talked, I guess that does make me a senior person. And I think this is going to happen all night, because Nick said the exact same thing I was thinking about when this question was asked, and it was just patience. I wasn't patient enough. But to drill down and be a little bit more specific underneath that umbrella of patience, I was in my second year of teaching, I think, when I was 25, and I would take, if students made mistakes in class like human beings do, I took it as a personal assault on myself. And I don't know why I did that, but it instead of trying to figure out why they made a mistake and help them, it would like kind of set me off that a clarinet player would squeak, and I'm a clarinet player, that happens. So it took me a while to just kind of get over that and not take it personally, and just try to figure out, well, what happened? How can we make it better? So yeah, there was that, and also just be careful about comparing yourself to other people. Every single person in this room has a unique path that's unique to you. My path is no better or worse than anybody else's. It's just different. So if you get caught up in this kind of spiral of, kind of like Nicholas said, man, my band hadn't played at a state convention, and it should have happened by now. Just be a great teacher, and those things will fall into place when the time is right for you.
Awesome. So for my unseasoned panelists, what is one thing you would tell, like, what's one thing you would tell your grad school self? Or one thing you can take from your grad school self? We'll start with Tanya, Kelvin, Shayna.
That's a good question. I would tell my grad school self, just work hard and enjoy your time. I think so much of college at any level, but particularly graduate school, is about forming deep connections and making really deep and meaningful revelations and insights about what it is that you choose to study. And if you constantly pile a ton on your plate and say yes to everything and try to get all your classes in at once and just do too much, and that means that you lose the time to really just reflect and be in the moment and be in your class or the music or whatever it is that you're working on if you do too much. So I would tell my grad school self, just, it's okay to say no to a couple of things. It's okay to have time to relax and reflect, because that's when a lot of growth happens.
Yeah, for me, it's kind of similar to that on the same lines, but I think I would probably tell myself, it's okay you don't know everything right now. Because I would just have, I guess the premise of grad school is you learn so much of what you don't know. And for me, it was, I need to learn all this stuff like right now. You're like, Persichetti, I'm studying everything right now. End of this week, I'm going to be, I could talk smart about it. So while I worked myself crazy like that, it was just, you're not going to know everything. And if you're around someone who is knowledgeable of that, because I was fortunate to be at a place where we would have people come in all the time, and people would just say things, and I was like, man, I never knew that. Man, I'm so dumb. I need to learn about that right now. And just kind of, as I got older, and now, not clearly, I'm nowhere near the gray hair stage, if you will. I'm more or less losing hair. But as I'm getting older, I'm just realizing that things I don't know, that's okay. Compartmentalize it, figure out a way to know that, but kind of segment things. And I think me having a family has kind of helped that out too, because I wasn't just a single person that I can just dedicate all of my time to. So it's just having, I guess, that balance of, career and health, things of that nature. But for me, it's just, it's okay you don't know everything, or the things you don't know. Just take your time to figure those things out. It's not the end of the world just because you just heard of the Berlin Philharmonic or whatever, piece of information you felt I should have known about that 30 years ago, and I'm just now learning about Carlos Kleiber or whoever. Like, that's okay. Take the time now to learn who that person is, and don't kill yourself or beat yourself up because of all the deficiencies that I was uncovering and unraveling through grad school.
Yeah, I have to agree with both Tanya and Kelvin. And to kind of add on to that, one of the things that I found out while I was in grad school, that sometimes I just had to allow myself to be me on the podium. where there's a lot of times where I felt like I was trying to be this perfectionist and the best conductor in the world and worrying about the techniques and everything, but I wasn't really allowing my true personality to come out until the very end. So I think for me, just my best advice would have been to you should have been yourself from the get-go, and kind of goes along with what Tanya and Kelvin was said. It's okay to not know everything, and I think that was my biggest fear, and what held me up from being myself was the fear of people finding that I didn't know everything. So I think for me, it was I should have just let go from the beginning, because I think I would have been able to open up more on the podium myself from the very get-go if I was myself from the very start.
And I'll add on to what Shayna and kind of Kelvin was saying. One thing I had to tell myself is to ignore everyone else. That you get so caught up with what everyone else is thinking about you, because especially in grad school, when all the members of the ensembles are pretty much pre-professional musicians or professional in some capacity, and you got your professor actually looking in the background, just staring at you like, you're gonna make a mistake. No. So I had to just really tell myself, okay, ignore them, shut up. I can do this. I'm here for a reason, and go. We have a question from Oscar Wright. Asked, this is specifically for you, Shelby. What are some tips and tricks you can share about the warm-up routine at FAMU that you guys use to get that such a great sound?
One of the things that, we all, I know, strive for is fundamentally we have to ensure that the students are playing with a great sound. And so for us, historically, with the infusion of concert band, year-round, symphonic band, wind symphony, it's always been a part of the program. So I'm fortunate to have inherited that, and it was a major part of our course of study as an undergrad as relates to the use of William White's unison scale and chords book. That's like the Bible at FAMU. We go through all of the exercises. When I was in school, we used them. We also used the 16-Bach chorale, the 48-Bach chorales occasionally, but primarily the 16-Bach chorale. And those were the two main books at the university level, at least for us, that were important. And needless to say, there are students that do study with applied professors because they're music majors, but you'd be surprised at the percentage of students that are in our band that are not music majors. But because of this private lessons approach that I'm sure some of you even heard Alfred Watkins speak about, is just part of that FAMU formula. So a typical day when we start our rehearsals, it'll start with, if you're familiar with that particular book where it goes through the series of major scales and minor scales, we'll take, for instance, say exercise number 1 or part 1, number 1, and there's roughly about 25 or 30 within that one section. We may pick out about 6 or 8 of them that we'll go through. Then there's some technical drills that are embedded in the part 2 exercises that specifically isolate on a unison playing, which we know is the cornerstone to great sounding groups when you get those students to really match tones and whatnot, and the major scale, minor scale approach. And usually what I do in January, post FMEA and other things that we participate in, because again, we have a lot of students that are in both groups, whether they're in the marching band and or symphonic band or wind symphony. We'll take 3 or 4 of those lines. And then there's some characteristic unison building exercises in the part 3, and we use those strategically to develop no last chair players. And when you can get that first chair player playing equally as the last chair player, I should say, if that's your concept, once you have your auditions, you have a band full of strong players. And so after that, we will typically utilize quite a bit of the Bach chorales as relates to singing exercise. I do a lot of singing with the students. We break the formula down within Bach chorales. It's scored at SATB. And so we break that down quite a bit so the students can actually hear what parts are cross-reference. The second euphonium part on that is actually the soprano line, and vice versa in other sections as well. And so we do quite a bit of that, the singing exercises and using unison exercises to create the sound that we do. And of course, I believe in the pyramid sound from the bottom up, although that's not the only choice that we make, because we know music would become boring if all the music is sounded bottom up. There's sometimes you do want to take liberties and have a little slight bright things as you work on some of the literature later on, but that's our primary focus. We're going to always, with the marching band, spend about 30 minutes on our warm-up, which consists of a lot of the pieces Mr. Sargent, our arranger, has composed for the band: lip slurs, long tones, B-flat warm-up. And then within the symphonic portion of the season, we're going to spend at least the first 20 to 25 minutes early on in the semester on a lot of the things that I just mentioned to you, and you can't go wrong. You know, there's such thing as moving that air and getting those slurred exercises going that's going to relate right to the music and getting the students engaged. I watched and observed, some of you may have been at this at Midwest one year. I observed the Ohio State University Symphonic Band, I think it was. The students rehearsed themselves. And so every now and then I'll fool around with that just to have the students, as we give them and provide them instruction, of course, to also make comments related to what they're thinking about the sound of the group. And we also put them in a huge circle within the band room. We also find out some other things as relates to them listening across the room. So those are just some of the things that we use to start our warm-up, which is very much so an important part of the curriculum on a daily basis. Then as we move forward into February or so, we may not spend as much time on all of those units and exercises, but we're always going to have some system of unison that we play.
Awesome, Shelby. I love it. Now, we all have like those group texts or those circle of friends that kind of keep us in line throughout life. What is one thing you guys take from your circle of friends that kind of help keep you on track within this band world? Start with you, Kelvin.
For me, I have a couple of them, those group texts, so to speak. But the biggest thing is just being yourself. I went through a phase earlier in my career where, kind of what I talked about earlier, I didn't know something, so I would work hard, or even to the point where I'm conforming to different type of norms, and then just realizing, like, kind of how Rodney said earlier, and I feel it's like almost gospel. It's like, you know, you are who you are, you know, and your story is unique and it's important, and that's okay. It's okay if, you know, I wasn't taking private lessons in 3rd grade, or it's okay if I didn't go to every major concert, you know, growing up, so to speak, you know, on and on and on. Like, that's okay. What changes is what I determined that moving forward and being the best, you know, musician and person that I can be. But at the same time, being me, because I won't be the next Claudio Abbado, you know, I won't be the next Muti or William Foster, so to speak, you know, but I can be a Kelvin Jones, you know, and I can be the best Kelvin Jones I can be. And if someone after me, you know, or even with me looks at that and finds inspiration or, you know, value in what I do, cool. That's not why I'm in the profession, but I don't have to change who I am to find success, if you will. So those that I consider really near and dear to me, they always remind me of that, like, just be you. You know, Michael Jordan's the big phase right now, and it's like, be like Mike, but it's really like, you know, be yourself and be true to you. Because at the end of the day, if you succeed or you fail, you can at least rest on your laurels that you were true to yourself, versus trying to conform and be like somebody else, and then you don't reach the goals that you wanted to do, but you started off from an imbalanced place anyway because you were changing who you are at your fundamentally base. But long story short, just stick to you and try to be the best you can be.
All right, let's see. Rodney, Shayna, Nick, Tanya, Shelby.
I think, gosh, I probably, the person I talk to the most is a good friend of someone in the room, Zachary Harris's friend, Rick Fleming. And Rick Fleming is, he's a good friend of mine from Florida. Ricky was teaching at Boone High School while Shelby was down in Miami. We were all kind of doing the high school band director thing. And he is a very, I always call him a very wise person. We will talk about something, and I think the conversation is done. And like a day or two later, he'll say, you know, I was thinking about that thing we talked about. and he'll have 2 or 3 more things to say about it. So I think, we talk a lot, and I think one of the things that's important is especially if you're in a new situation, you can learn a lot by just observing, just watching how people interact with each other and just finding people you trust and asking them questions. So I think that's one thing that's probably the person I talk to the most, smattered in with some other folks. But yeah, just to think about things, consider things from somebody else's point of view, not just yours. Somebody else might have a very valid point you may have not have considered before.
Absolutely. I mean, I would say the same thing where my group of friends are typically the people that I like to bounce ideas off of a lot, and kind of get that other perspective, other viewpoints. Sometimes it's almost good to hear that, yes, you're thinking the right thing sometimes from that mentor or friend that you have in the profession. So I think for me, it's just mainly bouncing ideas off of people. And sometimes when you have that bad day, it's always good to have that group of people that you can really rely on to help, pick you up if you're having that down moment in time.
Yeah, I think for me, I have several of these little kind of group chats, and for me now being in Australia, the WhatsApp and all that kind of stuff. But for most of those groups, I feel like my friends and colleagues, they help me to be reminded about the big picture. Like sometimes I get super hyper focused on some little thing, I can't let it go. So my friends are really good about that, as well as keeping me humble about like my position in this whole picture, of what we are doing in our profession. So that's good. And then I guess finally, I think about this, and I've said this, to my students a lot, and it sort of relates to these groups of people we have. If I'm the smartest or most talented person in the room, I need to find another room. So I constantly try to search and seek out people that I can be surrounded with, whether it is virtually now or in reality. I need people to help me be reminded of all the things, big ideas, little ideas. So yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah, I would echo what everyone else has said, especially what Nick just said. If you're the smartest person in the room, you need to go into another room. I really like spending time with friends or having different little groups here and there who give me ideas and inspiration and show me ways of thinking about things that I have never even thought about before. And I have a couple of little different groups, and sometimes it's hard to find a group that you implicitly trust, and that's what you need to truly open up and to truly share your ideas. A group that you trust, that they're not going to think you're stupid, they're not going to think you weren't paying attention, they're not going to judge you. Because when we meet new people, especially if you go into a new situation, then it's really easy to start thinking, oh, they'll think I'm dumb when I'll ask this question, or they'll think I wasn't listening, or they'll think I don't belong. And I mean, there's even a bunch of research about that the majority of teachers in any field in the first 5 years of their position have some sort of imposter syndrome on some level, no matter what their field is. And I think especially when you think about, our field, which has such a large demographic disparity, it's easy to think that. I find myself thinking that a lot. So it's nice to have friends who I can just relax around and I trust. And then the more I trust, the more I open up about, hey, what do you think about this? Oh, that sounds terrible. Okay, let's work on this. Okay, what do you think about this idea? Okay, we can add X, Y, Z to it. Okay, now it's so much better. So that's what I get from those groups.
Yeah, I would just say on the same line of what everybody's kind of mentioned, but I know when, as a young band director, one of the things that was important to the circle of really inner city, being honest with you, inner city band directors down in Miami, we would often get together for dinner, and that was a big deal. It's like we're getting together here now on the shop talk, and we just met at help me out, Chandler. You from Miami? What's the name of the place where we used to go back? Lums, right in the heart of Miami. And so there'll be sometimes maybe 10, 15 directors from, the neighborhood just chit-chatting about their programs, the hardships that some have, the successes some of them have, how do they get students to stay in school, what's important about the articulation with the high school to middle school, the middle school to elementary school, what's important about selecting literature. And as you dialogue with others that may just have a little bit more knowledge about you, back to Tanya's point there, you tend to grow. And so sometimes just sitting around just having a discussion like this can be very much so important. And that's why I think this is so spectacular that, that Irv and Jack and others have had the vision to do something like this. But in my opinion, that's really important. And I know it worked for us down there in the South in terms of having that type of camaraderie. The other thing that I would do during our spring concert when I was at Miami Central, we would have a huge, big end of the year concert, and I'm sure everybody has that, where during the concert band portion, I would conduct one piece, and the other 6 pieces, I would always invite another guest conductor from a high school or a middle school. But the good thing about that is the shared learning that came about, because that individual had to come in and rehearse the group, and he or she was always going to say something that was a little bit different from what I said. They always had a little bit more information about a particular piece because they did research on it, etc., that brought about a different perspective from what I may have had as I rehearsed the piece. And so those kind of exchange concerts and sharing ideas and having other folks in front of your students and not being afraid to let others conduct your ensembles, I think is very healthy. And it certainly worked for myself and others down there during our particular times. I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, there's nothing like having a group of friends tell you they love you. Hey, don't do that, or that's a trash idea. There's nothing like having someone who can really, really, really be honest. We have another question. This is from Zach. When you guys were high school band directors or public school band directors, when did you start making your transition from the marching band season to concert band season? And when did you select your literature? I'll just let you guys jump in. We'll start with Tanya.
For the first part of that question, I taught at a high school where marching band and all of the concert ensembles occur simultaneously all the time. And marching band was actually 100% extracurricular and optional, so that students who were in the concert ensembles did not have to be in marching band, and those who were in marching band did not have to be in the concert ensembles. And so we were just doing both at the same time all the time. So classroom was 100% concert ensemble time, no matter what that class was. And after school, marching band was 100% marching band time. And they rarely overlapped. They overlapped when we had pep rallies on Fridays and it cut into the school day. But other than that, marching band was kind of one thing and concert ensembles was something different, even though the personnel overlapped. And then when it comes to choosing music, for marching band, it was always chosen and done by the end of the spring semester going into the summer. And then for the concert ensembles, that changed every year that I taught. So the first year I taught, I was picking music like as late as you can possibly pick it, trying my best to pick it as early as I could so I'd have time to study. But in your first year of teaching, I think you're just trying to keep your head above water, figure out what to do, how they sound, how they work, getting to know everything. So it happened later. And then as the years went on, I chose music earlier and earlier and earlier and earlier because I got to know the groups better and how they played and what they responded to, and started having more of an idea of kind of the vision I wanted to move in. And So it evolved over time.
Shelby?
I'm sorry, I missed the first part of that question. I was distracted. Could you provide the first part of that question?
It was when you're a director, when did you make the transition from marching band to concert season? And when did you select the literature?
Okay. So we basically at FAMU we have a reading band during the fall semester, and so the marching band students, a great percentage of the marching band students are also part of the concert band during the fall semester, and that allows for our conducting students to have some podium time. And so the transition in general from marching band to concert band, again, a great percentage of them are part of that group. And of course, at the end of the semester in December, we have the auditions for one of the 2 or 3 concert bands. And so we make that transition to the spring semester and divide them up based on their auditions with the applied music professors, realizing that some of the pieces that we might select during the fall semester are going to be a little bit lighter because we only meet 2 days a week during the fall semester, as opposed to some of the literature that we'll play during the 2 concerts during the spring semester, which we can kind of load up a little bit more because there's more contact time with the students. And I do think feel as though that's very important, that the contact hours that you have and the music's relevance to what you might want to achieve that year is important. You know, in recent years, I've always tried to schedule at least one solo work that will feature all of the students in that section. And so we've done a piece that will feature just the euphoniums. We've done the Chaminade flute concerto, which is one of my favorite flute concertos featuring flute and band. And so we do things like that to also provide the variety and kind of put students on notice that, you know, you're expected to kind of step up to the plate during that time of year.
And for everyone else, I'm gonna just for the panelists, I'm gonna just put your order in the group so you can keep up that way. We'll do Kelvin, Rodney, Shayna, and Nick. Go ahead, Kelvin.
Yeah, for me, high school was for the marching shows. We did those in the summertime as I was just planning through. I was in a rural area, small, so a lot of our set numbers weren't dedicated or wasn't hashed out until first day of band camp to see like who said they think they come in versus who's actually coming, or people who transfer, so to speak. So a lot of in regards to the actual drill and things like that, I didn't write that until in the middle of band camp and so on and so forth. But we weren't competitive as, you know, we know competitive arts as we are now. We were more so just trying to build a culture and a community sense and dynamic. So we would do 3 to 4 different shows, but more like a varsity type show. It wasn't anything competitive in anything in regards to that nature. But it was segmented, whereas my teaching philosophy is we work on basic fundamentals that can transfer marching or concert band. Good music is good music. But in the truest sense of concert season, that typically didn't start for us until like early October. Once our football season was kind of dying down, then we started prepping for our Christmas/winter concert, and then full-fledged for festival and everything around the fall. But fortunately for the way we approach music, a lot of stuff just kind of transferred, just little tweaks here and there playing wise. But it was segmented. We weren't able to really have a full-fledged concert setting year round, which we were trying to build towards, but we were just trying to get the numbers up and establish a culture and a setting to do so.
So my last job in Lakeland with my top band, after band camp was done, from day 1 of class, we did concert music. Partially because I wanted to get them going with that as soon as possible. And the second selfish reason, by the time I was done with band camp, I was sick of working on the marching band music from our show. We did 1 competitive show a year. And I just decided with the top band, we're not going to play any of this stuff in class. Marching band was after school. Now, the second band, that was different. we did more of that in class and more skill building. And then I kind of weaned them off of that, where it would be, you know, 2 days a week we do concert music, and then 3. But with the top band, it was like if we hadn't had a home game in a couple of weeks and we hadn't done the Star Spangled Banner, last couple of things we'd run it. Okay, you remember it, good, move on. And also what we did, 3 schools. One was Ricky Fleming School over in Orlando, and another one was on Cypress Creek High School, where Steve Davis taught, who's now at UMKC. We just decided we're going to have a fall concert with our concert bands. Since it was 3 schools, no one group had to play very much. I think maybe we did 3 tunes, and it was great for getting my students out of Lakeland over into Orlando, hearing other groups. And we just decided to do it. I mean, now granted, my first job, I didn't do that. I had to work on that music more. But as I went along, I just made a decision. Top band, we're not gonna do any of this stuff inside. And it made a big difference because they knew, they knew that everything was important. Somebody else said, I wanted everything to sound good. It's not that, the marching stuff, I didn't care if they played well, I did. But I think for my own sanity, I had to go do something else. And I picked music in the summer for the top band after I kind of knew, what we could do and what we couldn't, because I do auditions the spring before for that group, so I knew who was coming back. But it didn't start out that way. It ended up that way for me.
So from my high school teaching experience, I guess some may say I had it easy. I didn't have a competitive marching band at all. We played in the stands, we did parades, and that was with the high school marching band. So it was a little different. Yeah, those stuff for that, right? So for my students, what I had them do is typically the stands tunes that we would do, we try to repeat a lot of stuff that we did, but we added a new song or 2 every year. So the more advanced group, the wind ensemble, because I had the wind ensemble and the 9th graders, which was the concert band. I didn't have the middle group. I had the top and the new members, basically. So what I did with the top group, kind of what Rodney was alluding to, is that whatever tunes they knew, they were expected to continue to know, and we just taught the new stuff to them. And then the freshmen, we do a lot more of learning of the music, because actually a lot of the pep band tunes were kind of harder than what they've ever experienced in middle school, honestly. So we had to spend a little bit more time learning the rhythms and everything for the tunes themselves. But once we started doing that, I tried to put at least a concert ensemble piece in every day, so that way they can get a taste of what they were going to be doing down the line in the winter. Like I said, the wind ensemble, we did less of it. The 9th graders, we did more. In terms of choosing the music, the wind ensemble was set the end of the year prior to that, so I knew who I had and what instrumentation and what were the numbers and everything. So I was able to pick the music the year before, and typically with our budgets, we had to choose it the spring before going into the fall, the way the funding works. So I had chosen basically all the music then. In terms of selection for music, I not only was trying to educate them on different composers and trying to use the different pieces to teach different techniques to them, but I was also trying to expand my own literature too, and my own rep. As a new teacher, I wanted to make sure that I was trying to venture out into different composers and different pieces. So I tried to make sure I was varying it for both myself and the students. Because sometimes when we get into when we're teaching high school, if there's a state list or rep list, sometimes that's a lot of teachers kind of get stuck with that. And I feel like in New York, I kind of got stuck with that a little bit. So I always tried to put something new in every year that I may not have known beforehand, and maybe something that wasn't in that book. So that way I was expanding my own literature at the same time.
For me, my situation, it sounds like was pretty similar to what Rodney was describing, with multiple concert bands during the day. In Texas, marching band is a very important thing, very competitive and all of that. we had a pass-off system for pretty much everything, from fundamentals, all the technique, the marching show. We also would do pass-offs for excerpts for a lot of the concert music too, throughout the year. But for us, the transition in the top band was once everyone passed off their marching band music by memory, then we moved to our sit-down band stuff. And I sort of pushed it along that everyone in the top band had to pass off their marching music by the second week of school. Because a lot of us in the room, and Rodney said it, like, I was tired of it, by the time you do that full out marching camp of all those rehearsals, for me, I'm like, okay, I get it. That's fine. So the second, third, fourth band, it took them a little bit longer sometimes to get through all the pass-offs, but that was how we set it up. Once the class was done with pass-offs, then we would move to concert music. And sometimes with the fourth band, which was mostly ninth graders, we might still be working on marching music until the very last day. It just sort of depended on how they were. As far as the concert literature, I plan all the time. Like that music and those ideas are always going through my head. So, I would have one plan at the first day of summer band camp, and it would be a totally different idea by the first day of school. You realize what the kids can do, what they can't do, or a new piece comes out, or something happens, and I'm like, oh, I think this is the year for, whatever, First Kenny Symphony again. Jack knows my relationship with that piece. I did a lot of drum corps stuff in my career, and I did marching band at North Texas for a long time, but one of the happiest days of my year was always when we could put that equipment away and not have to think about it for a while. So yeah, that was for me.
Great. So the next question is, what do you guys do for fun that's not band related? Like, what do y'all do to let loose? Start with you, Shayna.
Oh boy. Right now, my husband and I have been doing some kayaking, which has been fun to kind of just get out there in nature. I think it's hard right now to figure out what to do to let loose, I guess, because we're all stuck at home and can only go so far and somewhere.
Maybe I'll just do it before COVID.
Okay. Yeah, I would still say kayaking was one thing that I would do for fun. Right now, currently, I'm starting to get a little bit more into yoga. Just more of learning to be flexible, to relax a little bit more, and trying to think of what else I did before that. I'll stop there. I think that's good. So basically kayaking and doing yoga right now.
So Jack, I guess I don't understand the question. People have lives outside of music and bands. Is that what you're alluding to? Yeah, I don't know. I guess I hang out with my friends and play with my dogs. I don't really do a lot, I guess. That's sad. Someone give me suggestions.
Oh, sorry, I'm supposed to go next. I'm one of those people who once COVID hit, I realized, my life is not that different. And I think that's kind of sad too. But the hobbies I had were, I like to read. I like to write, like to physically write. We're in a safe space, so I'm going to trust you all that I can share my life. But I have like a quill set, like an ink dip well quill set, and do calligraphy, which is very calming. And I feel like it's similar to, what we do as musicians, and that we practice little things that all fit together for a big product. So I've been practicing calligraphy. I play with my little dog. The one positive about this pandemic and the situation that we're living in now is that it really forces everybody to evaluate, who you are, what do you like to do, what helps you get through your day as a positive human being, and then how can you take those things into your life when we do go back. I know for me in particular, I'm really excited to have some sort of balance where I can take all these things I've been doing that have been really calming and freeing and relaxing and incorporate in the life that I'll have, once the semester starts, whatever that will look like, and to not just let that all go and dive into work, which I know a lot of us do. And I have definitely done every single semester. I just forget about all my hobbies and I only just do work. And so I'm trying to merge those two.
For me, for a long time, I had no hobby. And this when I was a high school band director too. My first 5 years of teaching and my 1 year of grad school at Northwestern, I didn't have a hobby. So I started playing golf. And I did that the way you probably shouldn't do that. I just bought some clubs and some golf balls and started just whacking away. And so one day I said to myself, if a student walked in my band room and said they wanted to play trumpet, would I hand them a trumpet and some CDs and go, yeah, just go figure this out. And when you're good enough, come back and you can join band. No, we would never do that. So I took lessons. I found a guy I took golf lessons from, and I learned as much about teaching from this individual as I did about golf and the golf swing. He was just a master teacher. And sadly, I don't play as much, and this is before COVID, I don't play as much as I should, but I found it very relaxing. When I lived in Oregon, I got this wine hobby going because Oregon's a big place for Pinot Noir. So I learned a lot about growing grapes and wine and things I didn't know. And so that's kind of a hobby for me now. But yeah, find something to do other than the job. And I'm also married, so I don't have any kids, but I have a wife who she's a nurse. So, that gives me a good balance and perspective too. I'm not married to another band director and all we do is talk about band when we get home. So those are some things I do.
Well, actually, some of you may not have known, but I'm actually on the D League for the Los Angeles Lakers. So in my spare time, I'm waiting to get that call to join the Los Angeles Lakers out in California. No, but if you know my Facebook stuff, I love the Los Angeles Lakers. I know I'm born and raised in Miami, the Heat, but I love the Lakers and I love playing basketball on the side with my son, who's a junior now at FAMU. But I usually ride my bike every day, even during the regular semester when it's not super cold. I just love bike riding, and most of the time when I'm riding, I'm usually listening to gospel music because I love gospel music. And so that gives me the balance between the marching band music and the concert and orchestral music. But I love riding my bike, so that's my therapy here in the neighborhood where we stay.
The irony, some of y'all may not know this either, like Shelby and I share the same sports agent because, I was in the XFL for football. That's how Coach O and I are, good friends. And, Shelby and I, Mara, what I mean? She's up for us, so, But jokes aside, similar to like Shelby was saying, everybody knows me. I'm a huge Saints fan. If you cut me right now before the oxygen hits, it's going to be black and gold. But for that, exactly, who that? So huge Saints fan. I grew up playing sports, and just de facto, I am a sports fan. Recently, as in like 2 years ago, I've been taking up bourbon, if you will. So similar to how Rodney was talking about with wines, I'm not going to say I'm a connoisseur or expert at all, but I can talk my way around some bourbons and cigars in that regard. But for me, mostly in cooking, especially during the COVID pandemic, it has been more so time to explore things that I know in different cooking techniques and styles. But I definitely love to eat. So I would say those are probably like my big moments, if you will.
That's awesome. So the next question is going to be, how is it navigating the collegiate political scene as African American women or both? And what's some advice you could give?
Oh wow, and I go first. Oh, wow, that's a tricky one. Well, I'm just gonna be honest. It's unique, and I say unique. Well, let me kind of give a backstory as well. So the school I was teaching at in Louisiana was unique in regards. It kind of had like de facto segregation. So even though it's weird, like they had high numbers and metrics in regards to being a great school, they were skewed because you had a higher class and a lower class. There wasn't really a middle. Even though it's in a country rural area, those that had money, they did well, and majority of kids didn't. And so through that, before I got there, the black kids were in band, the white kids played baseball, black kids played basketball, white kids played soccer or golf. The only thing that was integrated was football. So all to say, I was unique in that regard because when I came in, as I mentioned earlier, my bachelor's degree was from HBCU, and I got a master's degree from a predominantly white institution, a PWI. So for the black community, they were used to and expecting someone to have kind of an HBCU background model. In this case, Southern University, which is a great program. And then for my white constituents, for lack of better terms, they were looking for someone with a PWI experience. So I was this unique person that kind of had both. And I didn't even think about these things. I just came in, I want to do band. So all to say, that kind of shaped me to whereas I was aware that you had these two dichotic things, even though I'm trying to just get to music. And music in its purest form, in my opinion, doesn't have racial lines. It's, are you in tune? Are you playing well? Are you blend, balance, blah, blah, blah. But those extra factors, just something that I wasn't anticipating, but kind of shaped me and prepared me for on a collegiate level. But I know for me, in my journey, in my experience, it has been different because I do get some of those people. For example, we had an interview this past year, and it was, that guy's at LSU. He gonna try to make them like a little baby jukebox or whatever. And that's reference to, Southern, because we're in the same area. And it's like, just because, I'm a black guy don't mean I'm changing LSU. And I may be a black guy, but I'm not a dumb one. If I try to change anything, regardless of who it is gonna be, like LSU has a tradition and you're not changing that. The same way if I were to go to my alma mater, Jackson State, and trying to change them, like, schools have their identities. So, but I do hear that, because they don't know me, they just either see who I am, or to be quite honest, I go on Facebook like I did last night, and there's a tune of our program playing something, a rap song by Lil Wayne, and it's, here's this guy, culture vultures, and all this, foolishness. And it's like, kids are playing something that impacts the team and the fans. So again, I have my own opinions about that, but you didn't ask that. So for me, it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, just staying true to myself, and it's unique. Like I didn't come from a conservatory for my bachelor's degree, but that makes me okay. As a matter of fact, our basketball coach and I are really good friends because our first conversation, when he first came there, they were playing against this school named Alcorn State. And we were talking, I told him I was from Jackson State, and he was just like, oh my gosh, like, you're from the same conference. And then that just kind of sparked something. And then we talked about my past being a sports player and all that stuff. And so all that to say, we bonded in a way that I never would have thought or was trained to do so. It was just being myself. Or even me and Frank Wicks, who recently just passed. Him and I were great friends, and we talked a lot about sports. We talked a lot about music, but him being a former baseball player, him being an awesome basketball player. So regardless of, black, white, yellow, green, or whatever, for me being myself, and it was okay for me to be myself and having that appreciation for sports, or in that case, my background that shared these relationships that I had with a lot of people. So for me, it's kind of unique because I still am navigating that, but I see that foolishness with social media, but I don't let that affect me.
Yeah, I'll just say, attending, if I go way back, to my high school days, Miami Northwestern, where our high school during that time was about 98% Black. And so, of course, going to A&M, one of the things that I know that we have developed over time at A&M is diversity within our program. And I saw the diversity as being something important to the members of the band staff during my undergraduate days. And as I went to an inner city high school, I wanted to make sure that that was a part of the culture I would develop even at the high school where I was. And one of the things that was important, at least for me, was working within the system. And all of our state associations have different systems. We have the FBA system where students are able to participate in different activities throughout the year, marching band, concert band, auxiliary, etc. And so watching the dynamics of students that participated and the amount of encouragement it provided to the students was something I think that was important in my days developing the program. And of course, as I went to FAMU and had a chance to kind of look back and just kind of reflect, those relationships that were developed with high school and middle school teachers over the years, I think the opportunities when some of us may be a part of adjudication panels and staffs and whatnot, where you get a chance to grow. I see Myra here rolling on the call and see what she's doing to promote outstanding music opportunities for college students as well as those others that will be a part of her platform. And I think as we become transparent and realize during this day and time, 2020, we're going to have to be more diverse. We're going to have to be more respectful to those that come from different backgrounds. We all will be able to grow. I was mentioning to the FMEA board the other day that one of the platforms that I'm considering, I think I mentioned it to Chandler, is multiculturalism in music and music education. I haven't decided exactly if that's going to be my theme in a year, but I thoroughly believe in that. I thoroughly believe in diversity in music education. My dissertation was centered around at-risk students and how middle and high school band programs help to save those students and enriching their lives through their experiences beyond those that may have elevators even in their homes sometimes. And that's not to take away from anybody that may have that, but it's certainly the unique qualities that we provide our students that's very important.
Yeah, I echo that as well. We have to provide those resources, and we have to provide opportunities for our students. I think I've had some challenges, just whether they be self-imposed or perceived challenges, or they're actually out there. But I mean, if you just Google conductor, you're going to get something. And if you just Google teacher, you're going to get something totally different. And so, I've sometimes struggled with seeing myself represented, in our field as a whole. And I remember meeting Myra Roden for the first time, who I know is here. And I remember going up to her at a Midwest and saying, I don't remember when this was, it was a long time ago. Hi, my name's Tanya Mitchell. You're such an inspiration. Oh my gosh, I just want to know you. And it was like an embarrassing moment, but she was so inspirational to me because it was one of the first times in my life that I saw someone who looked like me kicking ass in our field. Students loved her, amazing ensembles, NAFME Teacher of the Year not too long ago, just incredible. And when you see that and you see that representation, you don't even know that you were missing it. You didn't even notice that it was like a void in your life until you have it. And then it means so much. And so I think that aspect of just being yourself to navigate this field, just being yourself. And there's this amazing quote I saw the other day. Just do what you know to be right, or what you think to be right, because someone's going to have something to say anyway. Someone's always going to disagree. And so not trying to compare yourself to somebody else, not trying to be someone else, not trying to worry so much about what other people say, and just doing your research, doing your work, studying hard, believing in who you are and what you do and what you stand for, I think is paramount for anybody. And then also, I think it's important to recognize, differences and to build on them. Jack, you asked, what's it like navigating the collegiate field as an African American or as a woman or both? And so by being both, I really do think it's a way to recognize some disparities and to build on them, and maybe to use it as a way to change our landscape. I used to think that like simply existing was all that you needed, like just work hard, you'll be fine. But now I think you really have to, it's important to constantly advocate, and whatever that happens to look like, whether that's in, you know, joining professional organizations or in your programming practices, or who you choose to bring into your program, or who you choose to zoom in on a class with your students, but just making sure that students constantly see that there's all different kinds of people, so that they have that representation too is important.
Yeah, something that Tanya said kind of resonated with me, because a lot of the times to think about, you know, what we're going through in the field is sometimes could be put on by ourselves. Like we have our own thoughts about ourselves and how we fit in and what we see. I know with growing up, when I was doing my undergrad I went to Temple University for my undergrad, and thinking back then to think about, well, who was my role model in the field as I wanted to be an athletic band director. And I think that you could probably count them on one hand how many female, you know, athletic band directors were around at that time, you know. So to find those role models and to maybe be those role models for people. And for me, it was just, personally, it's always about finding my voice in the room and how it fits in. And I'm always self-analyzing how I fit into the conversation a lot of the times. That's more of something that I guess it's personally that I think about a lot. Because I mean, I've been to, and some of you may find this amusing or not, but I've been to different conferences, and my male colleague and I were checking into the hotel, and they automatically assume that I'm just their wife and I'm not checking in for the conference myself. And that's happened to me actually 2 or 3 times in my career. And it's quite, I mean, I found it amusing because I was like, this guy, I'm not with this guy, you know. But in all honesty, it is kind of hard to think about the fact that you go to check in for a conference and they automatically assume that the guy's the one checking in and not you. And it's kind of tough to deal with that a lot of times. So, you know, for me, it's just about overcoming those hurdles. And I hope that, you know, myself, that I'm, as an educator, I'm being a good role model for my students to see that you can be that person in the field, and you can go and be that music educator and you know, be a good role model for your other female students as well as all your students. So, and again, it's just, I guess personally, some of the hurdles that I've had to overcome, again, like I said, was finding my voice, and also just feeling like I was earning the respect in the room as being a female athletic band director was some of the challenges that I had to overcome.
Rodney, then Nick.
All right, good. I was just trying to unmute myself. Man, everybody's had just fantastic answers and very thoughtful answers. I think having, like, being the oldest person on the panel, and I started teaching college in 1997. You know, when I started doing that, and just where I went to school, just through kindergarten through 12th grade, I went to the University of Florida's lab school. Man, for a long time, I was like the only one in the room. And that gets a little tiring after a while. And I'm very happy and glad to see that, especially the college teaching landscape is changing. You know, every year Midwest, there's a lot of organizations that have meetings, and CBDNA, the College Band Directors National Association, has a Friday afternoon forum. Man, the first one I went to, it was just like, I sit down and it's like, there's no one else in this room that looks like me. and it's like, you know, goodness gracious. So when is that going to change? And you know, a lot of that has to do with what's happened in history, and then, you know, higher ed says you got to have a doctorate, et cetera, blah 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 blah. So as more people are, you know, getting doctorates, there's I always say it eliminates the things that it eliminates the things that eliminate you from jobs. So no one can say, well, if she had a doctorate, no, Tanya has a doctorate from a very good school, so that it's not an eliminating factor. So it's nice to see that that is changing. Personally, for me, I feel like I'm at a point in my career where it's like time to start speaking up about some of these things in the way that's sincere for me to do it. Because my mom was a high school teacher. She taught home ec, and my dad owned a funeral home. And my mom was very, very active in the civil rights era and in town. And so I saw her and the way she handled these situations, and she did it with an incredible amount of grace. She was very strong about how she felt about things, but she did it in such a way, it was disarming, but very truthful at the same time. So I think there's been a lot of times in my life where it's like, well, okay, you get on the Midwest board and, well, I'm kind of new here. Well, I've been on the Midwest board a long time. So I feel like I'm at a point now I can speak my mind about some things. So it's been an interesting journey for me. And my own school, it's nice to see what they're doing. I'm not the only one in the room, and it's getting better. I mean, Demondre Thurman was hired here last year. Thomas Wilkins is on our faculty, orchestra conductor. Marietta Simpson, we just hired a new voice faculty member. I'm really embarrassed. I can't remember his name. I didn't even know who this guy was, and I looked him up, and he sings opera all over the planet, and he's fantastic. So our dean has been purposeful about that, and I hope that our new dean we get continues to do that. But for me, it's nice to see the landscape changing, and I'm not the only one in the room. And hopefully, you know, I can continue to be, you know, someone other people look up to.
This is a tough one, especially being, you know, one of the more seasoned people, as Jack said. I'm gonna kind of throw this out pretty quickly, but I remember several years ago at North Texas, I got invited to this banquet for the barrier breakers in the history of North Texas, or something like that. And it wasn't until that moment that I actually thought about it. But I was recognized as, you know, the first Black band director on that campus, and then as a part of the introduction they did some research. I was the first drum major of the marching band back in the 90s. And so from that point, I don't know how to say it. It sort of magnified the idea that some of us who get to be the first in the room, there's a bit of responsibility that goes along with that. And keep this short. This is something that it's important to me. So I'm gonna try to get through this real fast. I remember Rodney.
Go for it.
Say that again. Yeah, when Rodney got the job at IU, that was a big deal. And when Tanya got the job at Penn State, that was a big deal. Like, I think that we have a responsibility of just being the best that we can be, because for a lot of people, we represent our entire collection of people. You know, when you're the only Black guy in that room, everybody else, they're going to assume that what you do and how you do it is how it's done in your community. So there's a little bit of responsibility that goes with that. And yeah, Rodney and Tanya, and I'm gonna stop now because that's what I have to say about that. So Jack, ask a question that's a little bit easier to answer.
But it's really interesting, you know, when you go a certain place and they be like, "Oh, you the band director?" Yeah, and then it's like, "Oh gosh," and it's just like, you know, it's like all the struggles from their past are done because you're the band. But yeah, it's awesome. So this is not necessarily a question. I just want you guys to give a thumbs up. Do you guys see yourself code switching a lot in the profession? Just give a thumbs up or thumbs down.
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Do you guys see yourself code switching a lot? And Shayna, you may not know what code switching is, and that's okay.
No,
it's just
it broke up on my end. Sorry, my end is going to know.
All right, cool. Well, the next question is, for those of you who are big on student leadership, what are some of the basic things you teach your student leaders, such as listening, musicality, etc.? That's from Brian. We'll start with Shelby.
Okay, and I'll adhere to my 5 B's. Be brief, brother, be brief. I understand, we got a lot we're trying to get together. But, you know, everything within A&M centers around our band motto. It's a long-standing motto since '46, where we really encourage the students to understand the character, their academics, their leadership, musicianship, marching, and their service is of extreme importance. And so we do quite a bit with mentorship and leadership. We've even been having Zoom calls. I call them synergy meetings during the spring semester once the COVID-19 kind of came to be. And we talk with them about how they can develop the kinds of things they need to have in place that would help with our not only our summer band camp and March 100, but the life values that we hope those virtues that I just mentioned are part of their lives when they leave FAMU. Then, of course, the students have multiple opportunities to participate and learn how to teach, which is observing the staff members. And I'm very fortunate to have a staff of about 6 or 7 that really are not paid at all, but it's just part of what Dr. Foster started years ago when the staff members were a part of the FAMU band staff, those who were applied professors even. And I know that's unique because there's schools where the band director is it, or maybe he has a TA or maybe 1 or 2 other persons. So I'm grateful to that. But we do a lot of mentoring with our students during the summer months, as well as throughout the year, and providing them opportunities to teach and stand in front of ensembles and chamber groups that'll help develop their musicianship. And I can go on, but I want to be brief because I know we're time sensitive.
You know, I think for me, where I teach right now, almost the majority of the students in my band are performance majors. Mostly performance majors, smaller number of performance/music ed majors, and then the rest are music ed students. And where I am, everybody thinks they want to play in an orchestra. So one of the things I try to do is to bring like a chamber music focus to the large ensemble, because I feel like the whole listening thing, when students are in small ensembles, they're really engaged, they're listening to each other, they move in a very organic way. But when they get into a large ensemble, there's something about that where I think they just kind of give up the responsibility to us standing in front of them. Okay, he's going to tell me what to do all the time, and I don't want to do that. So I try to get them to listen to each other when they play. And if anybody ever taught in Florida, when I did, there was a band director, Jack Crew, who taught was it Lakeland High School, Lincoln High School, And this guy came to rehearse my band once, and he said, you know, I don't feel like your students are listening to each other. And I kind of looked at him and went, yeah, okay. But I learned later on, when they really do listen to each other play, literally everything is better. And so I feel like it's my responsibility to help them really know where to listen. Because if you think about it, in band, a lot of times they're learning their part and they're learning the piece. They might not know the piece at all. So we have to help guide their ears around. And when that happens, for my students, I think they feel more empowered. And then it becomes more like that whole orchestra thing where they're one on a part and they're really listening to each other and making music. And that's where I think music comes from inside the ensemble out versus me micromanaging every note they play.
For me, it's interesting, different parts of my career. So now where I am, the student leadership thing is not as set up or as focused as it is in the U.S. So we're a few decades behind as far as that goes. But my time at North Texas and my time as a high school teacher and with the leadership group that I work with, we try to focus on two things in addition to everything that's been said so far. And the two things that I think students don't do really well at a young age are deal with each other and to teach at a level that makes the time that we give them in sectionals or whatever valuable. So I try to focus a lot on teaching the students how to build relationships, how to deal with conflict and confrontation, and just basic communication with your peers. You know, how do you navigate a situation where you're the section leader, but you're only a year older than some, or you might be a year younger than some. So we deal a lot, or I talk a lot about that building relationships portion of the equation, which could be helpful for anyone. And then the other part is just the teaching. You know, someone said earlier, maybe Tanya, but you know, your first few years of teaching, you're pretty much imitating that which you've seen before. And so in the beginning with our student leaders, I just give them a sheet. These are the things to listen to. When you hear this, say this, or if this happens, think about this. So for me, in addition to, you know, what's already been said, the building relationships and just some pointers on how to teach your peers.
I agree with what Nick had said about teaching the leaders basically kind of the format of how you want them to teach. Because in the ensembles that I work with here, there's a lot more non-music majors than there are music majors in the groups. So it's a lot about teaching the foundations and the core of what I would like to instill in the ensembles myself. So for me, I start from the very basics of teaching them, well, just the basic breath support. How do you breathe to basically produce a good sound? So I spend a lot of time with breathing. I talk to them a lot about their tone quality that they're making, and then how they fit within the ensemble. That's a lot of the basics that I teach, just to get their ears out of their own parts, to make sure that they're listening around the room. I like to have my students do a lot of pick someone across the ensemble to try to listen for in the group to see if they can hear that other part, because a lot of times they're just listening to the people here and here. So I try to make sure that they're listening across the ensemble as well. So I do a lot of that. So I guess balance, tone, breathing, and listening skills is a lot of the things that I work on with my student leadership.
Yeah, not to sound like a broken record, but all of those. I know in particular with my concert group, all the principal players, we meet once a week, and you kind of use that as a basis to kind of get them to think a little bit more deeper than where they are right now, or at the time, about music. So we'll talk about specific aspects to articulation, balance in the section. What are you hearing in this movement here? what are some of your ideas in regards to in phrasing ideas? I would do that a lot as well with the full group, but I try to get very specific with our principal players and with the hopes that they end up taking sectionals to kind of fit those things. With the group that I've worked with, most of my students happen to be music education majors and some performance, but mostly music ed. So we kind of get them to think, I hate to say think as a director, but in a sense, if you were making this at the highest level, how would that be? And in my experience, I've seen that sometimes it's, we kind of hit certain checkpoints, but how to dig deeper. And so it's a lot of basis of how to just get them to think more thinking differently and more conceptually about this phrase that may be in B flat major, that, may go to the fourth of that chord or whatever. It's like, how can you get that to make music versus playing what's on the paper? And then even when you get that, how can we get everybody into that same page? Because that's what all of the pros and those that do it at a very high level do. So instead of me making all the decisions, I kind of set it up to where I'm facilitating them to think about things differently. So we meet once a week with that. And then there are always times where we have rehearsal and it's, hey, Clara on clarinet, what do you think about this thing right here? And that's something that came up from a conversation we had in our principal players meeting. But that's what we do here on the concert setting side.
Yeah, I'm one of those people who I think leadership is very simply a set of measurable traits, and that when you combine a number of them, it looks like excellent leadership. I don't think it's this lofty thing. And because of that, it's practicable and it's measurable. And I think students are really good at sometimes identifying the what and the why, because they do a lot of conceptualizing in college. And sometimes they're not very good at doing the now how, the actual implementation. And so a lot of what I'm trying to build is their ability to understand the what and the why, and then now do and now do and do the how. And so, and that sometimes looks like two things. I want them to have opinions, and then I want them to be able to articulate that opinion. Very simply, I spend a lot of time on building those two things and articulating that opinion in a manner that shows their knowledge and their background and their research, but also their flexibility and their willingness to be wrong and to grow. And sometimes in rehearsals that looks like that's some questioning, like what did you hear? Very open-ended. I think students are really, really good at being able to identify what's good and what's not good. And then that next step is, all right, now tell me specifically why. All right, it's the second horn that's slightly flat. Like, that's a hard thing to listen for. Or it's bright because the trumpets are playing with this particular sound. Or it's we're not all crescendoing together at the same rate. Some people are, some people aren't. So we're losing our cohesion. And so questions like that, open-ended questions. Where's the climax? What's the goal of this race? So I think that's the aspect of leadership that I work very hard to develop in students, not just in ensemble, but in all classes.
All right, and then the next question is, what is one band piece you would take to the grave with you, and why? What is one band piece you'll take to the grave with you, and why?
I told you to ask easy questions. I don't know. I don't know. So maybe it would probably either be the Persichetti Symphony, I think, or Posey. And so, oh my gosh. So if it were the Persichetti Symphony, I would go with that piece because of the colors that are created in that work, the solo opportunities, the diversity of style and energy. Yes, that's all I'm going to say about that. Those of you, if you're not very familiar with the Persichetti Symphony or any of his works, since we have time to listen now, really just go find some recordings that are available. Check out not only that piece, but his other pieces for band and also for orchestra. I think he's an American composer who is starting to be forgotten. So I'll leave it with that, and then I think.
Oh yeah, Persichetti number 6. They say Persichetti make you sweaty. So I hear you on that, Nick. I don't know. For me, I'm with Nick. That's a hard one. I would say just because this was the first piece that I took very seriously, and like the first one, like I know front to back, left and right would be Holt's second suite, and I would probably even say first suite, but second, like I that was the first piece. I was just challenged from my teacher to know that score like you know your name, and just the different historical things that Holtz was inspired that he did that with. But yeah, second suite Holtz.
That's a really hard one to answer. I mean, I'm at a point in my career where I haven't really done anything twice yet. So I guess I would pick a piece that I had the most emotional connection with myself, with my students too, the piece where they seem to have the most emotional connection, and that was O Magnum Mysterium. It's a vocal transcription. And so yeah, that's my piece, just because it's different no matter who performs it. It's different in every ensemble, with every conductor. There's so much room to put your heart and your soul into this piece. There's so many different colors that you can change, you can alter. There's so many different places you can grow where others may not have grown. It's just so different no matter what you do. And so probably that one, because it's been the most touching for myself and for the students.
Intimate Symphony, B flat. Love it.
Okay, so I probably have to say Posey, just because that was one of the first musical moving moments that I had as a conductor, was conducting that piece. And I would say probably because of that. Otherwise, one of the newer pieces that I've come to love has been This Cruel Moon by John Mackey. And I had a really great connection with the last ensemble that I conducted that with. And I think that holds kind of a near and dear, part in my heart, is to have that emotional connection with the musicians on the podium.
Yeah, I would agree with Shayna. Mine would be Posey as well. And I say that we had the opportunity to perform, a lot of his high school directors at times, and some of us, I think, even Rodney with his high school group may have done it in its entirety. But during my high school days, I had never did the Lincolnshire piece in its entirety. And in 2015, I programmed it for our FMEA conference, and it really stretched me as a conducting teacher and as a conductor of the students that were in that class. And it also pushed the students, I think, to think about the Granger colors that he, as he traveled from those different venues and the folk songs that went along with them. And so that piece will be one that I'll probably do in another year or so again, probably every 5 or 6 years, because it's just a great band work and it tells so many stories. And I remember specifically, I asked Rick Clary to come over from FSU and rehearse the group, and as well as Alfred Watkins came down once to rehearse the group. And it's just so much that's embedded in that piece. And you get those lower voices going, you get all the different perspectives with the piano inclusion, and it's just a great work. And to have the opportunity to conduct it all was something special that I will take with me.
I'm going to pick on some of the other conductors in the audience that answer this same question. Danny Mesa, if you join us, if y'all don't know Danny, he is one of the conductors in the Army Band. He's stationed in Hawaii, I believe, right now. And if you don't know, he has this series out, the one minute conducting video on YouTube. You should really check it out. So what's your answer, Danny?
Oh gosh, thank you for the shout out and for including me. I was totally not prepared for this, but no, I'm gonna stay with Granger and talk about Lincolnshire and all, and simply because of the colors. Every time we perform something Granger, my goodness, that's the one thing that always sticks out is color. and how we make music. And it always just unites us when we perform Lincolnshire, because there's so much going on, and our imagination, when it comes to the texture of music, that brings us all together as an ensemble. And O Magnum Mysterium as well, that was one of the first pieces when I was a high school band director that I really dove into, and I really learned from beginning to end, kind of like Kelvin was saying, and really made me appreciate, going deeper into the score study and all that. But really, what made me, for the first time as a conductor, study a score and really bring it to life and really give adaptation to a piece. So I will say Granger, and then O Magnum Mysterium as well. So that's my take on that. And thanks for the invite, Jack.
Chandler Wilson, what about you?
Good evening. Well, thank you as well, and good evening, everybody. I don't think you can go wrong with Granger, but I am going to take an angle like Tanya did, and because I'm not at the point yet where I think I've conducted anything twice as well. But there's a piece, and it's not one of the heavyweights, but it was important to my students and myself, and it's a piece called 1,000 Cranes by Robert Sheldon. And the reason why that was really important is because we were working towards making history at my first school, Hollywood Hills High School. School never received a superior on the state level, and about halfway through that piece, I knew that we had it. Like, it was, the students were so invested, they put their work in, and we pulled it off. The first one in school history out of 70 years of the school being open, and they were able to finally get a superior at the state level. So that piece was emotional because they had to put themselves into it as well. So that was a good moment. So I guess right now for me it'll be that, because of the emotional aspect behind it.
And then lastly, Gabe Arnold, what about you? Maybe not.
Okay. All right. I'm going to go with Granger as well. And my favorite song is Colonial Song from there, for the beautiful colors and the beautiful harmonies. I mean, I think I had a moment where I shed tears. I didn't want them to see, but I think I shed a couple tears during that piece because of the colors. And I think that piece was just so wonderful to me and my students when we performed that piece when I was at the University of Hawaii. So, Colonial Song.
And then I'll throw in mine as well. Mine would be Irish Tune from County Dairy, and it's just a very sentimental piece. It's one of the my father used to sing Danny Boy to my mom all the time, and on my last concert ever at my high school, I programmed it for our state assessment. The band they played it very, very well. And as I was ending my final concert as a high school band director, my intern, he said, "No, you can't. You got to go down there." And they played Irish Tune for County Dairy, and he recorded every student saying, "I love you, Mr. Eaddy." So I still can't do Irish Tune to this day because it still gets me all up in my feels. It was probably one of the best things ever. All right. So we'll go to another question. This question comes from Don. During your career tenure, what's one of your highlighting accomplishments or achievements as a director? And we'll start with Shelby.
I believe mine would be to see the success that I think I was able to invoke with my high school students. I went into the situation, and being again transparent and honest with you. The first day they keyed my car and bust my windows out at Miami Central High School. That's how I started off. Inner city. Basically, it was a dumping ground. At that time, it was long past the days of Ken Tarbert, where they had 20 All-Staters out of that same neighborhood that would make the All-State, and that was an incredible feat for a high school to have 20 All-Staters from the inner city, and of course, several directors. And as I built the program, starting with about 60 students to include auxiliary, I saw the development of the program over the years to even see 2 students who were valedictorians at the school, Silver Knight winners there. Students, we changed the culture in terms of students that had outstanding grades. You know, and I'm not trying to brag, I'm just mentioning some of the things to you guys. We had a chance to perform at BOA and the Marat Center. We had a chance to march in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. And when I left to come to FAMU, we had a band program of 275. I just missed Chandler Wilson because he came over as a 9th grader that summer as I was leaving to go to FAMU. And so I would say just seeing how we were able to change the culture in that high school level, working through the system of FMEA, working through the system of FBA, and getting the students involved and believing in themselves, especially in the inner city, was something special for me. And there are other things that came along later on at FAMU, but it's nothing like those ground roots and humble beginnings that were so valuable and important, that helped me to grow as a conductor and as a band teacher.
Yeah, I have to actually I agree with Shelby's point, and mine is a little bit different. I think mine goes to just seeing long-term student success, individual success. There have been things, milestones in my career, et cetera, with groups. But I don't know. I think for me, it's really neat to see how well students succeed. I mean, there's a kid who was in the band at Rickards, trombone euphonium player, went to Georgia Tech to be a business major, and now he's singing opera. So it's not just the music success, but just, nice to see where kids go to college, if they do grad school, if they have families, how they're doing. I think it's just nice to just see just student success and kind of track them through their life. That's one good thing about social media. You can kind of keep up with those students as over a year.
I think one of the moments that I enjoyed the most, especially when I was in teaching at the high school, was and for those of you who are not familiar with New York State system, the New York NYSSMA Ensemble Festival, you get ratings and it goes like bronze, silver, gold with distinction. One of the things that the wind ensemble really, really wanted to get was that gold with distinction. And when it finally got to that point, and they actually, because all of the music that's in that manual doesn't always meet our instrumentation needs. I never really had a lot of oboes or bassoons or anything in my ensemble. So to try to program some of the music that was listed in there was always a challenge. But to find that right balance of music that fit the group that I had that year, and they actually succeeded and achieved their goal distinction that they were trying so hard for the past few years, was actually probably one of the best moments for them to see, is that they had no idea that they had played that, to that level, and they were shocked themselves, and I think they were very proud of themselves. So it was nice to see them be just to achieve their goal. So.
Yeah, mine's similar to that. It started off musical. It was my first year teaching high school. I was just big on all the parameters, honor band, great musicianship. That was my MO coming in, developing musicianship. And we had a kid make an honor band, first time in school history. As we're driving to the honor band, I took him, kid came from little to no resources. As we're driving, we passed the mileage sign, and it says we have to go to Hammond, Louisiana. It said Hammond 28. And so the student looks over and said, Dr. Jones, well, at the time, Mr. Jones, what does the 28 stand for on that sign? I'm just looking like, it stands for miles, duh. I didn't say the duh part, but I'm like, it's a miles. And he just goes, oh. In that experience, I realized that was his first time ever leaving St. Francisville. So he goes there, made the honor band, did well. First time, while we're there, his first time eating at Raising Cane's, Wendy's, Taco Bell, and a few other places. So I do an assignment like I do with every kid. If they make an honor band, something like that, they write up a report to talk about their experience and what they took away from it. And he wrote in that letter, and I still have it to this day, about this totally shaped my future, reframed my future of what I thought, what I wanted to do after high school. I literally thought I was just gonna join the farm and work like my father. But now I actually have an interest in going to college. And then later he found out, like, he thought college was like high school. You just show up day one, you get a schedule, and you go on about your day. But it just kind of, it opened his eyes to his first time being on another college campus, first time on all these different endeavors. So just that little experience that for me, that was about, you know, musicianship, you know, yes, I'm considered a part of our equals because I have kids making honor band. It totally shaped my even philosophy and how I teach and go by approaching students to caring about that person and developing experiences and skills that can serve them long past music. And that person ended up joining the military with the Air Force Band, one of the satellite groups, and it's doing great. And it's just all sparked from him going to an honor band in freaking Hammond, Louisiana. You know, it was just something just so small. So it holds near and dear to me because that experience totally reframed my whole perspective of how I wanted to be viewed and how I wanted to go about teaching.
Yeah, mine's kind of similar. You know, I would have to name one biggest accomplishment. It would be that I'm still in touch with a number of the students I had when I first started teaching. The high school students I taught at Chambly, the students I taught at Valdosta, and I hope to stay in touch with them. And the parents too. You know, I think all of us on this call today are here because we love music and we love students. And so every time that we get to share anything about ourselves, especially music with students, it's a win and it's validating. And so when the pandemic hit, I had students who I taught in 2011 call and check in, and parents send packages from the booster organization from Chambly High School. And some of them are in music now and some of them are not. But I think it's validating to have that that connection with people, which is ultimately the goal, that we get to inspire lives and change lives through music.
Yeah, I think we're all on the same page here. You know, I feel like one of the aspects of what we do through music, and Tanya was just alluding to this or just mentioned it, we change lives and we enrich lives. And for me, the thing that I like to see the most is this lineage of how our students are impacting others. You know, it's almost like that movie, It's a Wonderful Life. You know, now my first kind of round of students, those kids I taught when I taught high school a long time ago, you know, they're now parents and they're teachers and business people and doctors and all the things. And because of social media, Rodney, you're right, I can see who their kids are, and their kids are going into college now. Okay, maybe I'm one of these seasoned people. And so it's just great to see that my impact on this group of people has had an impact on a group of people, and has had an impact on a group of people. And so I think for me, that's the best part of it, because you know, what sometimes might seem somewhat insignificant to us at the moment could be a life-changing thing for a kid. You just never know. So that's, for me, I think that's it.
Awesome. I've been asked to ask, just for fun, can all of the college directors or professors drop their institutions in the chat so everyone can see how we're here to support each other? And the next question is, what is your programming philosophy? And I'm going to ask you to give the super quick, super fast version of this answer. So what is your programming philosophy? Starting with Kelvin.
Something that can appeal to everyone in the audience, including my wife, who's a nurse, who's not a musician. I always think about how can she leave here having a good experience.
Nick?
Yeah, for me, it's music that I love, music that I'm passionate about, music that I think has value. And also, you know, the next level of that is to be sure that the music that I select represents what needs to be represented. You know, so if you look at a a list of composers, it's not going to look like, I think Tanya mentioned earlier, someone did. If you Google conductor, what are the pictures that come up? So if you Google composer, I try to be sure that my programs don't look like what Google tells us composers look like.
Shayna?
I guess the short version would be is I like to create and develop a program that has highs and lows within it, whether it be a slow piece, fast piece, you know, something challenging, something that would, you know, be easy for the audience to understand and not too complicated, and then also making sure that I have a good range of composer representation on the program.
Yeah, I would say diversity in terms of the style of the music that's being presented and the level of difficulty, and not being too much over the board, but at the same time challenging those students, and always being very musically sensitive.
Yeah, picking music that's engaging and meaningful for the people who play it and for the people who listen to it, and then making an effort to make it as collaborative as possible so that people who aren't normally part of the wind band sphere can be part of the wind band sphere. And then making sure that there are the audience and students see composers that they don't normally see in the upper right-hand part of the page.
Awesome. So can you guys tell us the importance of commissioning new works, and who's one person you would commission right now? We'll start with Rodney.
Yeah, I think for us, band-wise, it's important to commission new works. We're a young ensemble. We haven't been around that long. You know, it's not like Brahms wrote a symphony for band. He didn't. So, man, if I had to commission someone right now, who would it be? Ryan Lindveit. We just did one of his pieces on a recital, and he's going to start his doctorate, maybe at USC. I think he just finished at Yale. Young composer, really, really outstanding.
Am I next? Okay, sorry, I didn't see the chat. So I think for me, the commissioning is super important. I think it's also important for us to start commissioning more with the chamber ensemble works, because I think there's a lot of work to be done with our chamber music. My dissertation was on women composers in chamber music, so I did a lot of work on that and a lot of research on it. But one composer that I found, this is a large piece that I did with University of Washington's Wind Ensemble, was a piece called Bicycle Shop by Lisa Despain. She has more of a musical theater and opera background, so it's kind of a little bit of a quirky piece, but it's fun and gives that little bit of a lightness to a program. So I think, you know, tapping into some other avenues of works and musical styles would be good for our field.
A composer that I want to commission, I know is part of the commission right now, is actually on this call, Kataj Copley, and I talked a little bit about leadership developing an opinion and then articulating that opinion, knowing the what and the why, and then the next step is doing the how. And so that's a composer I've been doing a lot of reading about, a lot of listening to through friends of mine who have played this music before, and also a student. And so, you know, being part of the building process and introducing new voices to our field.
And if y'all don't know Kataj's music, you should look it up. If you're a composer, can you drop your website out in the chat so we can check you out in the future? Sorry, go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, that's a good question. First, I just saw Zach Harris's post. I forgot to mention earlier, I was born in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, so I definitely have this Southern connection with a lot of you folks on right now. So yeah, in the sit. I remember the call last week. If you weren't on it, there were several composers who were on, and I did a little bit of kind of snooping and was really impressed with some of those composers that we saw last week. There's another composer from Texas, Quinn Mason, who's a younger guy. He has a really interesting voice and background. I met him when he was in high school at an honor band. And another person is Kathy with a C, Kathy Lakuda, who is, I believe she's Ukrainian, but she's living in Australia. So she's one. Her color palette is really very interesting. You know, I can't even compare what she does with anybody else. So she's one to maybe consider in addition to the folks that were on last week as well.
Yeah, I would say, I'm actually in the stage with the whole cbDNA scenario that's coming up really shortly. We hope that we're able to get through this COVID-19. But I have spoken already with Omar Thomas about doing something for the Florida A&M band. The schedule is just so god-awful busy. And of course, he's transitioning out to Texas. And so I'm doing a lot of research in that regard because I have some alumni as well as supporters that are willing to assist with the whole financial resources that are going to be needed as we do. I do plan on commissioning a work, at the cbDNA conference. So it's forcing me to do a lot of thought, as in the past I would not have done as much. We participated on some consortium, but never have we led the charge with that. So that's where we are. That's where I am right now.
Sorry, that's me. Mine is two. One would be a composer who's currently at Columbia University, Syed Hogdad, Charles Ives Fellowship Award winner of the American Academy of Arts and Letters. Writes a lot of gorgeous music. He has a Middle Eastern background. And the other one would be Osvaldo Gulioff, Argentinian composer. He got into a little trouble a few years ago in regards to quote-unquote plagiarizing, but he's written for every major orchestra, and both of them, I think their writing would lend themselves totally to our medium. And obviously what we do is important in regards to commissioning. You don't know who's out there or what's the new fresh perspective, if we're not out there exploring who that can be. There's a reason, there are articles and even some studies have shown how in the orchestra, they've been kind of suffering even before the pandemic, because much as we love our iconic composers, Mozart's, Beethoven's, people now they've seen or showing aren't relating to them as much as they did hundreds of years ago. So one thing that makes our medium so refreshing is we're kind of championing the newer work. Sometimes it's great, sometimes maybe not so much, but it's that challenge of getting a breath of fresh air out there in some type of capacity, which I feel is vital to our future as a classical entity within music.
Panelists, if you could type those names in the comments if they aren't posted now, so we know who to look out to. I have two more questions for you before we have to end. This has been such a phenomenal session. But the first one is, we know with Corona, we don't know what the fall is going to look like. What are some things you're doing in preparation of the fall, of the unknown fall? And we'll start with Nick.
Our situation's a little bit different than what's happening or what I'm seeing in the U.S. in that our school system is different. We start at the beginning of the year. The fall for us is at the beginning of the calendar year. So in August, we would start semester 2, which is going to happen, I assume, in August. And, our number of cases in Australia is really, really low right now. We're averaging about 10 new cases a day for the whole country. So I think our situation is going to be different than perhaps what we might see in the U.S. At this point, though, we still don't know what's going on. We've got a lot of contingency plans. For me, I'm trying to stay open-minded to any possibility, and also I'm just considering just a reimagination of what we can do. You know, so if we had no parameters and you get to do whatever you want to do, that's what I'm thinking about now. And then, of course, I'm sprinkling in, okay, well, there is a parameter of not able to have 50 people in a room or whatever. So I think it's just being open-minded with some things to consider that you maybe wouldn't have considered 6 months ago or a year ago. And also take care of yourselves. So that's all I got. Thanks for the invite.
Honestly, what I'm doing right now is meetings and meetings and meetings, which seems to be the process of what we go through. But one of the things that, you know, trying to think outside the box in terms of instrumentation, if there's small ensembles, what type of chamber works can be planned. So I've been trying to do a little research on that. In terms of planning for how this is going to pan out, really, I don't think we'll know the answer until we step into the classroom in the fall, honestly, because I think it's changing ever so frequently. But one of the things that I'm mainly focusing on, especially with the marching band, is just working on the community portion of it and trying to maintain that community portion within the ensemble, regardless of how the fall is going to look. So I just have to figure out how I'm going to do that with like my symphonic band. I know with the marching band, I have a lot more connection with who's going to be joining and everything right now. So it's a little easier to do with the leadership. But I think just the biggest thing to focus on is the community aspect of the music portion at this time, and know that the students are going to need that connection again with each other and to play music together for the first time together. And the fall is going to be a glorious time, I think, for all of us, honestly.
Yeah, this is one of those times where all those little band sayings really come into play. Hurry up and wait. Flexibility is the best ability. Like this is what we're living right now. So I'm just trying to be open-minded about what's going to happen in the fall, prepare the best I can, but not get overwhelmed thinking about scenarios that might not happen, and then really think about how to develop students in ways that we normally don't get to, like, or that we don't get to do as often as we would like to, like facilitating entrepreneurship and technology skills, critical thinking and listening, mentorship, community, public school outreach, like deeper listening, exposure to different music, inclusivity, and all those things. And then when we find out what fall is going to look like, finding ways to incorporate it in a way that is sustainable, not just something that's busy work, but something that they can take with them when things go back to whatever normal ends up being.
Yeah, we also we're not sure what's going to happen here. Our president gave us university president gave us 5 different scenarios, 2 of which I don't think are going to happen. So probably it'll be somewhere in the some kind of hybrid, some in person, some not. Programming wise, I'm just thinking about. You're right. This probably won't look like the normal year in terms of what we do rep-wise. So thinking a lot about chamber music, and even at that, we haven't done, or I'm not sure of studies that have been done here to tell us, how many people with social distancing can fit in our rehearsal rooms or on stages. So, but I'm thinking probably more smaller things with a group. And I agree with Tanya. So many of the things that we're looking at now as a substitute for, that large ensemble experience, how much of that can become a part of what we do from, now on. And that'd be a positive change for us.
Yeah, short answer is we have absolutely no clue. I know we have 6 different scenarios we've worked through to figure out how something could possibly work, but we have even explored, kind of piggyback on what Rodney's saying about the chamber groups. But same thing is, one thing that I know we're leery of is at our university, a lot of students take master classes. So are we trying to turn what we normally do to be the trumpet ensemble within symphonic winds, and that's not the spirit of what we do. At the same time, is it safe for everyone? So we've even talked about building like plexiglass, if you will, to be like a stand in between you and the person to the left and your right. We already have sound barriers for the front, but we don't know if that will actually prevent anything due to errors. So right now we're just, if this happens, we can do that. If that happens, we can do this, that. So it's almost like just throwing paint on a wall, and we're trying to figure out whatever we're told or informed through research and the studies that are coming out that they say you can do this. We can at least come from a perspective of, all right, we have somewhat of a plan versus, at least in my case, an upper administrator saying you're gonna do this, and without me thinking through some scenarios. So even though I feel like I'm running around like a kitten with my head cut off, it's like I'm at least thinking about every possible scenario. Then how could we possibly make something like this work? But short answer is we have absolutely no clue what we're gonna do over here.
Yeah, just ditto play, really. I wish any of us, I'm sure we wish we had a crystal ball to possibly predict what and where we're going to be going with all of this. And I know there's several, band organizations, and I know Tanya and I on the CBDNA committee that are putting some things together. And Colorado and Colorado State have a couple of research things that are going on. There's so many articles out there that can somewhat be misleading, even in some regards, because of the way the administrators sometimes take those things. So we have to be careful of the information and that's out there, that's prudent, that's been tested, and just continue to trust in the man upstairs, because he's the only one that really knows. But at the same time, we got to have the kind of I think provide that is the support to our students as though things may come to fruition in terms of some of those programs being ready. I was on a call with our special task force on the committee on the campus, I think last Thursday and Friday, and we were talking about things related to a hybrid where some students would come back, and I'm sure some of you have heard that too, and some students would, the essential, I think they're calling it, essential personnel or students that will be on campus. And so no one really knows, I think for sure, but certainly I think it'll be imperative and important for us to stay engaged with our students in our own way. And I know we've been ordering software. I was speaking to Mr. Sargent, our chair, today, about ordering software just in case we're out online, and anything that's related to being able to disseminate proper instruction, we're going to be ordering it because it may be just that in the fall.
All right, and then our last question is, what is one piece of advice you would give to someone interested in going to grad school for conducting? We'll start with Rodney. And if we could make this the super quick version, because we're out of time.
If make a list of the schools you're interested in attending, go to a conducting workshop where that person is teaching, so that when you apply, you are not a nameless face. Somehow, some way, work with that person before you apply. Because you wouldn't go study trumpet with somebody without taking a lesson first.
Yeah, ditto with what Rodney said, and the only thing I'll add to that is don't be afraid to do it, and don't assume that you're not talented enough to be successful at it.
I would just say go into that with a lot of conviction and something that you believe in and something that you're going to give. I mean, that true passion that you have with your students in your program, carry that forth during your graduate school training.
Sorry, I didn't see your order. I just would say make sure you feel comfortable with where you're going, because this is someone who's going to be, whoever you're studying with is someone who's going to be supporting you through your career and giving you that, I guess, that recommendation for you in the future. So make sure it's somewhere that you feel comfortable, and also somewhere that you're going to be able to get the experience that you need to get into the profession.
But all things we already heard, and then also make sure that that person's value system and vision kind of aligns with yours, because you have to like them and they have to like you for who you are, not for who you think they want to see.
Yeah, kind of everyone has said, like, making sure they know who you are beforehand. And it means, like, even if you're going to conferences, do so. Establish relationship, go to conduct the symposiums, reach out and see if you can sit in on a rehearsal, just so you can establish a relationship there. And then kind of really emphasizing what Tanya just stated. Don't necessarily try to go after, I heard this is a big name school, or this group does a lot of great recordings. They may be true, but go somewhere where that person cares about you and you feel you can grow. Because a lot of people have the philosophy of, you want to go somewhere where they feel they're gonna get you the job. Like, if you work with a great mentor, they're gonna foster skills, and someone that's gonna be your advocate and your supporter throughout it all, regardless if they've been on the cover of everything you've seen growing up, or they're a good person that you've seen them work with and you feel you can grow and be happy and, learn there. So, yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much. Can everyone give the panelists a nice round of applause? Yeah. And so just like Nick and Rodney has put out there in the chat, they would love to help you. All you have to do is ask. And that goes for anyone I'm sure that goes for anyone on the panel and anyone on this group. We're all busy in everything that we do, but if you take the time to ask the question, we will definitely take the time to answer for you, because we want to make sure everyone is getting better and being successful in everything they do. And we aren't going to know that you need help. So please reach out to the panelists. Thank you guys so much for giving your time and sharing your knowledge with us this evening. Now I'm going to turn it back to Will.
I can only say that this is a great way to end our 8 weeks this spring semester. Thank you, Jack, for facilitating tonight and asking such great questions that gave us all some insight on how we want to live our lives as music educators, conductors, and as people. I'm so glad that everybody really got in and talked about the humanistic side of who we are and what we need to be, showing everybody that music makes us. I'd also like to thank my boss, Mr. Yate Shabazz, who is on the call as well, for allowing us to have the platform to do this. So let's give Mr. Shabazz a hand as well for hosting us these last 8 weeks. This thing basically really started out, folks, as 4 people just getting together to have a drink on a Monday night. Darius Valentine from Mississippi Music, who's on the call, myself, Zachary Harris, and Yate Shabazz just talked about it, and then David Lott and Kedrick Taylor from Southern University got on the call. Expanded to this, really a historic night, having so many, up to 97 people on the call tonight, and that's a lot compared to what we've had from week to week. Shayna, I'm glad to meet you, and thank you for coming to talk with us tonight, and to everybody else that I previously had a relationship with. I appreciate you all coming on, as Jack called you all to come and speak with us. Mr. Shabazz, you want to say anything?
Hi, everyone. I am so happy and elated to have all you guys on tonight. So much information tonight. It's been overwhelming, but overjoyed to see all of us come together and to hear the knowledge that was imparted tonight. This is, to me, a Midwest. I think most of us learned more tonight than we did in the last 6 months. So I thank you guys for sharing yourselves and your knowledge and your expertise with us. And I look forward to more of this, and hopefully the day we could all meet and greet in person. And thank you for the panel tonight. Thank you, Shayna and Kelvin and Rodney, who's my board member. So glad to have you on tonight. Dr. Shelby, thank you guys so much for doing what you do. not only just for education, but all of those who are involved in this craft. So thank you guys so much for what you do. And I just want to leave you with this too. I don't know what the fall is going to look like. I think none of us know we came to that conclusion tonight. But if any of you guys ever need any music clearance help, or if that's just something that is a thorn in your side, please let DEVMUSIC take that off your plate. I think that's one thing we could do to kind of help people navigate through this musical nonsense that's been going on for the last 5 years. And we have proven ways to help. And this is just a way that we can give back to you for giving so much to us. Thank you guys so much.
Just to be clear, I just want to make sure you all know that we would do that as a service to you all. So just if you need help with that, please send us an email, either myself or Yate or the company, and we can get that information out to you all. Thank you, Tanya.
I'm sorry. I'll put the email address in the chat, just in case anyone needs some guidance or some help or whatnot.
And for college directors and high school directors, if you would like for us to come in and put together panels or bring us in to talk to your students, like we've been doing the last 8 weeks, please send us an email to pd@devmusiconline.com, and we can help you out with that. As we do every week, we will stay on just a little while to drink and talk, but we know we've had our panelists for a while, so I don't think they will probably be on as long. But please, definitely, just hang out and talk a little bit. Just hang out. No agenda or anything. We're just going to have a little fun and have a conversation for a little while. Thanks, you all. The business side is over, but we'll have a little fun.